for this course.
Okay.
So today's session is more of a, overview about what the role of a business analyst is about and what is it that you can learn from this course. So that's the
All
two
right.
things that I would cover as part of this topic.
Okay.
Feel free to ask questions, interrupt me anywhere, and if you don't understand anything or you want some more clarifications on it, feel free to interrupt me. You don't have to, hold on to your questions till the end of the session.
Okay. All right.
Keep it interactive. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So before I start the course, let me give a brief introduction about myself. I'm Raju. So I'm a computer science engineer with an MBA focusing on systems and technology. Okay, that's my education background. I've been working for more than 10 years now. Throughout, it's in IT industry and various roles. A significant part of that as a business analyst. Okay, so I've been teaching for the past 3.5 years now, and the course is pretty much comprehensive from what the industry requires, mandates, and meets up all the and it's purely industry or job focused, right? So there's not some theoretical course that we're doing, and so it's purely job oriented training that we're offering here. Okay. Now, having said that, let's move on to get some more understanding about, get a better understanding about the role of a business analyst and what you can into these 6 knowledge areas. Okay.
Okay.
Now, if you ask me what is the key role of a business analyst, right? I would say, he's the guy who's managing the complete requirements, and he ensures that he connects the business team and the technical team. Okay? So he creates that common ground of understanding of the requirements. Okay.
Yeah.
So now, how do you manage these activities? What do you mean by managing requirements or create a common understanding? How do we do that? So that can be done by these 6 activities. Right? I'll explain that in a little more detail, each one of them. Okay. Now, if you look at,
I've also taken this business analyst course in my graduate study for only 3 credits, and from there I just got to know it's just a bridge between the technical group of the people and the managing group of the people. It is just a bridge between them,
the
right?
business team. Yes.
Yeah.
So So what do we mean by the bridge, right? So what exactly do we do on a day-to-day basis, right? So how do we manage the requirements? This is something which I'll explain you in a little more detail, so that you can get a better understanding about the role of a business analyst. Right? Now, if you look at any of the projects, right? So there would be a business team who knows how the system should function. Okay. So there are people who would actually be using the system. So they clearly know that this is what I need as part of the system technology like Java or anything, right? Now, the technical team expects that these guys would give me the comprehensive list of requirements exactly that they want, and I can code it in that particular program, let's say Java or .NET, and then give it back to them.
Yeah.
Then these business team would think that if I tell them that this is what I need, these guys can actually develop it.
Okay.
Right. So there's always this disconnect between these two people, right? So there's always this disconnect between the business team and the technical team. So neither of them is well equipped to understand the requirements in detail and capture them, right? Now, business team thinks that this is a good enough information to understand the requirement, and the technical team would understand it in a different way, right? So there is always this confusion. So whether during testing time, the customer would say, this is not what I asked for, and the business team, the technical guys would say, no, this is exactly what you have told me, right? So to avoid all these situations, you need somebody to manage the requirements.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's what a business analyst would be doing. Now, what is your primary role as a business analyst? You would engage with the business team to understand the requirements, right? You will completely understand the detailed requirement. So you are responsible for asking all those right kind of questions so that you understand the requirement in detail. Okay?
Yeah.
And once you understand that, you document the requirement in such a way that technical team can understand it clearly.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are some frameworks for it, like there is a use case, user story, then you have PR diagrams, There are multiple ways in which you can document your requirements. Okay.
So yeah,
So
basically in a company level, when a customer or okay, let's say a customer comes to you and he will just describe what kind of software he just wants, and after that you just need to mention the basic requirement of the software, and you just need to make the documentation for the software, and you have to present that to the technical team of the company, right? And the technical team will do the coding on that. It's like that, right?
yeah, the users or the business team will tell you the requirements, and it will be your responsibility to document.
Yeah,
So the users are not documenting it. So I think that's a small correction, but broadly your understanding is right. So they would tell you the requirement. So you're talking to them and engaging them to understand the requirements, right?
Yeah.
Now
I have
normally,
I have one question. So if someone is business analyst, then he doesn't have to correlate with the coding stuff, right? He doesn't have to do any coding stuff,
doesn't
right?
have to. Nothing.
Okay, yeah.
So like I said, these are the 6 things that you would do in a project, right?
Yeah.
So I think, let's revisit that question and then look whether you have to do any coding or not. Definitely not, but you'll clearly know what a business analyst is expected to know.
All right.
Right?
Yeah.
So, the ways in which you engage with the customer. So, for all, if I ask you, how do you go gather the requirements? How would you elicit the requirements? You'll say, I'll go and talk to the SME, right?
Yeah.
But that's only one way of getting the requirements out. So you could conduct a workshop, you could conduct a brainstorming session, you could have a reverse engineering session, you could have an observation technique or a prototyping session. Right? So these are all various ways in which you need to be aware of, so that you can effectively understand the requirements. Right? So as a business analyst, all those elicitation techniques. There are 10 ways in which you can understand the requirements. So you need to be aware of all those 10. And then how do you document them? It could be done using some flow charts or some process flow diagrams, some mind maps, some user stories, use cases. There are multiple ways in which you can document it. So you need to be aware of all those techniques of how you can document your requirements.
Yeah,
so these are the 2 main skills that a business analyst would possess. Yeah, you're saying something. Good.
Grant chart. A Grant chart.
Sorry?
I mean the Grant chart, just like use case diagram and when the project will be finished and how long it's gonna take. You will divide the
Gantt
project.
chart is a project plan, right? So it's more of a project planning. But how to document the requirements, you tend to use some specific tools. Anyway, I would come out to the details of that, of what kind of that you'll be learning them. Right. So primarily these are the 2 things that will be deliverable, and this would be coming in as a document called as a BRD. Right. So these 2 things would be generating the business requirements document.
Okay.
BRD as we call it. Right. So a very important deliverable from a business analyst.
Yeah.
Okay. You would also help the project manager in planning for the requirement related activities. So the Gantt chart and the project plan that you're talking about, so that would be something which you would contribute to as part of the planning. For all requirement related activities, you will create that high level plan and then provide those details to project manager. The project manager would collate it from those various stakeholders and then create an end-to-end plan and publish it. Right? So that's how it works. Okay. So apart from this, you would also identify new projects. What all projects can this organization take up? Right. So should we implement a new CRM system, or should we release a new app for this functionality? Right. So you figure that out. Then you will figure out how much investment do we need to make. Right. What is the kind of benefit you will get from it?
Yeah.
So basically, you are creating a business case for it.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the kind of activities you'll also get involved in. Right? So since you're talking to the various stakeholders, you also manage the communications. Right? So not too complicated a topic. It's just the best practices of communication. How do you manage conflicts? How do you create a communication plan? And how do you finalize on all those documents? This is something that you would learn. Okay. And finally, you would also coordinate the testing of the system. So while you've captured the requirements from the business team, and the solution has been developed, the application has been developed. You will take it back to him and then he would test it. So you would coordinate that, validation of the system and ensure that all the defects are analyzed, fixed, and then, the system is signed off from the customer, right? So that's your final
isn't
testing.
that the job of the tester? The
Yes.
testing the
So
system.
there would be a QA team, but it also play a minor role as part of the testing.
Okay.
And if you look at the industry, if you look at purely from a BA role, it won't be technically a testing role, right? So it would be more like coordinating kind of, and then identifying the various options available and then figuring it out. But if you look at the industry would want you to get involved in the testing, right? So you broadly you should be aware. In some cases, it would be a BA and QA kind of role. So they expect you to know the basics of testing, right? At least most of the roles that you look out for, they expect you to understand how a testing cycle functions. How do you create the test plan? How do you create the test cases? And then how do you coordinate with the customer for completing the UAT? All these things that you need to learn, right? So, like I said, it's not purely from a theoretical point of view. I've taken the industry needs and then comprehensively ensured that it's covered into this course, right? So you've learned that as well. So those are the 6 things that are mentioned as the key knowledge areas of a business analyst. Now, who has done that? There is an organization called IIBA, International Institute of Business Analysis. So they oversee this profession of a business analyst. It's a non-profit organization. So they provide those best practices, guidelines, and all those things for a business analyst role. So they are the ones who offer the certification as well. If you have checked for that, there is a certification called Certified Business Analyst Professional, CBAP, CBAP, right? Yeah. So that's a certification which is well known in the IT industry, right? So people aspiring, or rather who are experts in a business analyst role, tend to take that certification, right? So you can take that certification only after working for a few years. So it's more like you need to gain the experience and then take the certification. Okay, so it's not available for people without experience. So you cannot take the certification at this point in time, the CBAP certification. Okay, now our course is aligned to the syllabus of CBAP. Right? So while we are not focusing on the certification, I've aligned the topics to those 6 knowledge areas what are specified by IIBA and kept it the way it is. I've added one more session which basically introduces you to the IT industry. So how does things work in the IT industry? Who are the key people in the client side? Who are key people on the vendor side? And then when a project is formed, what is the org structure? What is the governance structure? What are all the various phases of a typical IT project? Right? So there would be a planning phase, requirements phase, design, development. So the first session, couple of sessions would focus on that, right? Okay. So the first chapter would be on the industry overview. It will help you understand how things work in the industry. You'll understand broadly what other people are doing in the organization. What is your role? You'll get more clarity on that. Okay. Then we would get into the detailed roles about each one of these 6 knowledge areas, right? Requirement elicitation, planning, and all those activities. Let's go into a little more detail. So as part of planning, you'll understand the various stakeholders, and then you'll understand all the activities that you'll be doing, and then you would help in creating the project plan. Okay. So the primary responsibility would be with the project manager, but you would provide a significant inputs to that. Then you also manage the scope, changes, and risk. So basically, you would set up those frameworks as part of the planning phase, and these are ongoing activities. Right? So scope management has to be done throughout the project. Similarly, change management and risk management as well. So we learn that, and there would be case studies as well from my previous experience, which we'll discuss, so that you can get that practical feeling. Right? So you can actually consider the scenario of how you would have executed, and then we'll discuss that as part of the case studies. Yeah. Then we'll learn the various techniques in which you can engage the customers to understand the requirements. So there are 10 ways in which you can understand the requirements. So we'll learn all those 10 ways. We'll spend some time with some case studies as well to to validate our understanding through the case studies. then we'll focus on how do we document it. So broadly, there are these three main ways, I would say: structured analysis, object-oriented analysis, and agile ways of capturing requirements. Right? So structured analysis is a bit dated. We don't really use them much. It was more popular in the early days. Object-oriented analysis is mostly widely used. So the use cases are UML-based diagrams, which are used to capture the requirements. So that comes under the object-oriented way. And then a lot of requirements these days are captured using user stories. Right? So because the projects are executed in the Scrum model, and this is an upcoming way of executing the projects. So the way you capture the requirements and execute them is completely different. So we need to be experts in writing user stories as well. Right? Apart from this, there are a lot of other techniques, like you would have this process modeling, document maps, right? And then the prototyping, wireframes, and all those detail techniques would come in. You need to be aware of them. Right? So finally, at the end of this session, you will be in a position to write down your detailed requirements. You will be an expert in documenting your requirements into the BRD. Okay. And yeah, so the communication plan, like I said, it's more like a best practices about what you need to manage about the requirements communication.
Yeah.
Solution assessment and validation, like I said, will focus on the testing. So we'll learn about the various phases of testing, the levels of testing, and all those details. Enterprise analysis is usually the first step, but I covered that at the end of it because it's a bit complicated, and you'll be in a much better position to understand it. So we'll learn how to identify opportunities, how to build a business case, and how to update the architecture, business architectures, and all. I'll give you a brief overview about it. There will be a lot of other topics that we would cover, like maybe a session on Visio, SQL, Rally. Right, so there are multiple tools which will be used for each of these processes. So while they are not core topics, I've listed down under the miscellaneous because we cover them anyway. So primarily, that's what we would learn as part of the course. Right. So the course is well suited for people who are new to the industry and the role of a business analyst. Right. So either you are coming fresh out of your graduation, or if you are you worked in other industries and planning to move to IT industry, right? Or people, the technical teams as well, trying to move to more client-facing roles. I think this is the best course to take up with.